Guys, I'm Jason Boucher here with the third podcast for More Week. Here we have Dave Landers. He's been a very influential part of the St. Michael's community and culture for the past 30 years?
38 years.
38 years. He was the faculty athletics rep, and then he got promoted to the faculty athletics rep for the NE10, where he went to NCAA faculty conferences and really just he spread his wings, I'd like to say, throughout the NCAA, and just made incredible stands talking about mental health and mental awareness at them. So, Dave, how are you today?
I'm doing fine. How are you today?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good.
It's raining here in Williston. I don't know what it's doing on campus, but it's raining out here.
It's raining as well here, but I'm very lucky to be in the presence of a top 40 human being in the entire world. So it's pretty cool. I feel honored.
and that wasn't exactly it. It was top 40 individuals, influential people within the NE10. The Northeast 10 is celebrating its 40th year.
Okay.
So they decided to select the 40 most influential people, and it was quite a shock and a pleasant surprise. I really was very shocked from that when I found out that I had received that honor. So,
well, congratulations! You should be very proud of yourself, and it's a very big achievement that, it doesn't come very often. So, good job. All right, so I'd love to kind of start with, tell me your connection with Hope Happens Here and kind of how it started and like what your role was when it started.
Sure, I'm happy to, and I really appreciate what you're doing, and the whole process of this. The concept of more is so important, and I'm glad that you folks have come up with it. So in 2015, Justin McKenzie and Danny Davis, who were both sophomores, and at the end of their sophomore year, they went home for the summer. They're both on the men's ice hockey team, and as the faculty athletics rep, I worked with all 21 varsity teams, in addition to teaching full-time at the college. So I taught gender studies. I had a course called Men and Masculinities that I taught. I also taught sports psychology, abnormal psych. And so Justin and Danny went home for the summer, and in December, a friend of Justin's who he had gone to high school with in New Jersey had disappeared. And this was a student athlete. He was a track star at the University of Pennsylvania, Division I school, lots of pressure. And he disappeared right after Christmas. And everybody assumed that he was dead. And so the guys go home, and Justin was home probably 3 weeks when they found his friend's body. And so in addition, and they determined that the young man had committed suicide. And so Justin got in touch with Coach DeJulian on the hockey team, and he said, look, he said, my friend committed suicide. He said, in addition, he said, I had an uncle who committed suicide a couple of years ago during the financial crisis. What can we do as varsity athletes to talk to students about these issues of mental health? Great question. And so the coach, Damien's awesome, and he understands all this stuff. And he got in touch with me and said, what can we do to support these guys? And so I got in touch with Justin right away to make sure, first of all, that he was okay, because he had just found out that his friend really was gone. And then, and I said, let's talk. I said, think about this over the summer, stay in touch with me. I said, when you come back in the fall, let's get together and talk about how we can do this and what you can do. And at the same time, I said, one of the things you might want to think about is, getting in touch with Catherine Welch, because Active Minds looks at all students on campus, but you're talking about looking specifically at student athletes. So we stayed in touch over the summer. So they got back in the fall, and in the meantime, Justin got in touch with me and said that he and Danny had gone for a trip to Boston to visit their friends from the team over the summertime. And on that ride, Danny had shared with him, Danny was his roommate, his line mate, best friend. He shared with him that he had been dealing with depression, and that he had gone to see the coach, and the coach had gotten him to see a counselor over in the counseling center on campus, and that had really helped. But Danny had never shared that before. So they got back, and Justin said, okay, what are we going to do? And so, he shared what had happened with Danny. So I got Justin and Danny, and then Shannon Bullard, who was the women's basketball and the advisor for SAC, and just an awesome human being. She's amazing. And we met in the conference center, conference room up in the athletic department. And so we started talking about all of this stuff, and Danny shared his story and Justin shared his story. And I said, look, we can't deal with everything about mental health. I said, let's all four of us write down 3 things that we can deal with, and then we'll go from there separately. Don't talk to each other, just do that. So everybody wrote down on a piece of paper, myself included. And I looked at the 4 pieces of paper and they all said the same thing: anxiety, depression, and suicide.
Wow.
So I turned to them and I said to the guys, okay, this is your baby. Shannon and I, we can support you. SAC will support you. I'll support you, whatever I can do. The athletic department's going to support you, but it's up to you to do this. And they're like, okay. And literally within a couple of weeks, they had talked with Active Minds. They talked with Catherine Welch, and we had a table of information on mental health at the opening volleyball game on campus over in Ross. Now, who tables at a volleyball game? Not very many people. And they did that, and so they combined. They did posters, and then they just started. They then went to SAC. They presented at SAC, and out of the 52 members of SAC, they had 24 people who wanted to work with them.
Wow.
So they started working very actively on that, and they did everything from, let me see if I can do this with the camera. There we go. So you see the green one is the wrist bracelet. And I've had this on since, 2016, I think. And that's the one that says, "You are loved," which is what my t-shirt says.
There we go. Represent. Love it.
And the other side says, "Hope happens here." And so they came up with the name Hope Happens Here. They started organizing, doing all this stuff. And all of a sudden, we had varsity athletes, men and women, talking about mental health issues: anxiety, depression, and suicide. Anxiety, depression, and suicide. And so we started that started an awareness. So then they started having more tables at more athletic events. And all they were trying to do was to educate their friends, their teammates, their classmates on issues of mental health. So it started growing really fast, and I was really excited about that. And so they got some financial support from SAC and some financial support from the athletic department. They got the t-shirts. They started selling the t-shirts at athletic events. They got the wristbands, started selling those, and they were just creating an awareness. And then Chris Kenny had a connection with Enosburg Falls. And so Enosburg is just north of St. Albans here in Vermont. And so we were invited to go up and talk with the school. So Chris Kenny and I drove Justin and Danny up to Enosburg Falls to talk to a high school. Now, those guys had never done anything like that before. They were scared to death. In fact, I thought at one point we were going to have to pull off the side of the road because I thought Danny was going to get sick. They were so nervous. And we get up there and we go into the auditorium, and here are these 2 guys, male hockey players, talking to an entire student body of about 350, 360 students and faculty and administrators. They talked about Hope Happens Here. They talked about why it was important to them. They talked about mental health. They talked about, you are loved. The 3 of us we all had the t-shirts on and everything else. And, and at the end of it, and they thanked everybody. And then Justin said, Dr. Dave's going to come up and have a few words, which he had not warned me he was going to do. So I went up there and I said, look, everybody has stuff. I've got stuff. You've got stuff. The guys have stuff. Your principal has stuff. Your coaches have stuff. The real question is, what do you do with that stuff? Justin and Danny are talking about their stuff, and they're trying to share what went on with their lives, and they're making a difference. What are you going to do? What are you going to do to deal with your own stuff? Thank you for coming. You can all go back to class now. Well, they didn't go back to class. They came down to the stage, and Justin and Danny were sitting at the end of the stage, and Chris came over and said, you guys might want to move over to the center. They moved over to the center, and all of a sudden, these high school students were sharing personal stuff that they had gone through, but they never had anybody address it to them before.
That's amazing.
And Justin and Danny were blown away by that. I mean, it was incredible. So we went back, and I mean, they really were, they were amazing. They did such a good job. And so Hope Happens Here just started really being an important factor on campus. I started talking about it at the NE10, at the meetings for the Northeast 10. And then I started talking about it with people at the NCAA. And so for the last 3 years that I was a faculty athletics rep, I spoke at the NCAA National Convention about Hope Happens Here and about dealing with mental health. And, the speakers on the panel would all show up, and and I remember the chief medical officer of the NCAA, was an awesome guy, and and he comes with his his suit and his tie and everything else, and I show up wearing this, wearing my you are loved, and started talking about what can you do at your college or your university across the country. There was a tremendous amount of interest on that. So by raising that awareness, we were able to get people across the country, and then we started getting information throughout the state. So a couple of years ago at St. Mike's, I met with the Principals Association, Vermont Principals Association. So Dave Marlowe is the athletic director at Mount Mansfield Union High School. Mm-hmm. Dave is a former student of mine. He was my work study when I was in the student research. And Dave saw that I had posted stuff about this on Facebook. So he calls me and says, can we get together and talk? I said, sure. So I drove out to Mount Mansfield, sat in his office and talked with him about all this. And he said, I've got a group of students. He said, I'd love to have a talk with your students. And I said, well, let's set it up. Mm-hmm. So Dave brought 6 of his athletes from the high school, 3 men, 3 women, to St. Mike's. And we again met in the conference room, and I got them together with men and women from Hope Happens Here. And I just sat back, and Shannon just sat back, and we let the students talk to each other about what they were doing and why they were doing it. And so all of a sudden, it wasn't just St. Mike's, it was St. Mike's colleges, but also a high school. Mm. And so a high school then came up with T-shirts of their own. The high school came up with the wristbands, and their wristband says, it's okay not to be okay. And then the other side says, Hope Happens Here. And then we started getting other requests. So I got a request to speak to the parents about Mansfield Union High School. And again, I don't do those presentations without taking students, because people are used to my saying things. They're not used to students saying these things. So I took the 2 co-chairs of Hope Happens Here, and we went to Mount Mansfield Union High School, and they spoke to 75 parents. And they spoke for 15 minutes. I gave them some money, then they went and got pizza, and they left. And then I talked with the parents about why it was so important to deal with these issues. In the meantime, Justin and Danny, were getting ready to graduate, and so some of us nominated them for the Hockey Humanitarian of the Year Award. Mm. Now that award is open to all Division 1, 2, and 3 male and female ice hockey players in the country. Wow. Division 2's never gotten that. There's no way. And there are only 6 teams in Division 2 in the entire country, and all of them are in the Northeast 10. There was not a chance in hell they were going to get this. Well, they did. Wow. And so at the Frozen Four, the Frozen Four in Chicago, Justin and Danny were awarded the Hockey Humanitarian of the Year Award for their work in creating awareness around, suicide, depression, and anxiety. So in talking with Dave Marlowe got me to talk with a group of the athletic directors across the state, high school folks. So I talked with them, and what we were able to do then was we set up a conference at St. Mike's, which was over the break that our students had already left. But we had 75 people from around the state, all high school people. So we had coaches, we had principals, we had athletic directors, we had counselors, we had nurses, and they all came together up in the over in the conference center at St. Mike's, and it was amazing because I asked my friend Jim Howland, who teaches at Merrimack and has a degree in sports psychology, to be the keynote speaker, and he starts off and he says, "So why are you all here?" First guy raises his hand and he goes, "I've been a coach and an athletic director my whole life." And he said, "I've been dealing with depression." He said, "I've never talked about it." He said, "I'm so glad that we're going to be dealing with this." Awesome way to start. Second guy raises his hand. He said, "I'm the athletic director at BFA St. Albans." And he said, "I went into school this morning before coming here." And he said, "Found out that one of our very popular seniors had committed suicide this morning." There was not a sound in the room. Not a sound in the room. And he said, "It's so important that we're doing this." Well, one of the other people who was there also works at BFA St. Albans, and she got in touch with me, and she said, "Can you come up and talk with our students? Because they are devastated with his death." So 7 o'clock in the morning, I drove up to BFA St. Albans, went into the gym, and there were 48 students out of the 50 students who were part of their student athletic group of high school kids. And I talked with them about you know, and one of the questions I said, you're all asking yourselves, why didn't he tell us what he was going through? We would have helped him. Why didn't we know? And I said, I have an answer for that. And they're all, I mean, they're looking at me, and I said, you didn't know because he didn't want you to know. And we had this amazing conversation. And at the end, students were coming up, several were crying. They came up and thanked me and everything else. And these two students, a male and a female, walked off without saying anything, which was fine. And they got to the door and they looked around, and everybody else had gone by that time. They turned around, they came back. And the guy said to me, he was my best friend. Thanks for doing this. I mean, it was incredible. But what happened at that period of time, there was a period of probably 4 weeks when a student at Champlain College committed suicide, a student at Norwich committed suicide, a student at Stonehill committed suicide, a student at the University of Vermont committed suicide, and then a student at Mount Mansfield Union committed suicide. We had the young man at BFA St. Albans, and there was one at CVU. So we had 7 suicides in a very short period of time. It's like, we have to do something about this. We have to get more information out there. Mm-hmm. So what we started doing was getting students from Hope Happens Here who were willing to go and talk to different high schools around the area about why this was important. And again, if you're a high school student and a college varsity athlete comes in to talk to you, you're probably going to listen to them more than you're going to listen to Dave Landers come to talk to them, because they expect me to do it. They don't expect you to do it. They don't expect, their peers to do it. So, I mean, that's the history behind it. And then when Justin and Danny graduated, they started a corporation, of Hope Happens Here. And Justin, it was a CS major, and Danny was an English major, and Danny went to law school, but he continued working with Justin. And we now have chapters of Hope Happens Here at, I think, around 12 to 15 different colleges and universities around the country.
Wow, that's amazing.
And so getting that word out to talk about, and the reason they started this was that we want the stigma attached to talking about psychological issues. We want the stigma to go away. Mm-hmm. It's okay to talk about these things. And so when Justin and Danny would say to their peers at St. Mike's or wherever they went to speak, it's okay to talk about it. This is our story. This is what we've done. We've dealt with this stuff. It's okay to be, it's okay to not be okay. Stuff happens. And, and Michael Phelps, when I taught sports psychology, I used to use Michael Phelps all the time as an example, because Michael Phelps is probably the most outstanding male athlete swimmer we'll ever have. If he hadn't gotten arrested for DUI, he would probably be dead. He got arrested, went to jail, but the judge forced him to go into counseling. And he went into counseling, and now he's a spokesperson for telecounseling. So he's now on television all the time, talking about it's okay to talk about stuff that's going on. Mm. And that's, and it's not just Hope Happens Here, and, and it's Active Minds, and it's a collaboration between Hope Happens Here and Active Minds. And now with TBC, it's important, and it's important to talk about sexual violence. It's important to work together collaboratively with the student government, with SAC, with Black Lives Matter folks, so that you can come together and say, we can talk about all of these things. You're not alone. You don't have to deal with this stuff all by yourself. And the reality is, everybody has stuff. And so there was a thing on the national news 2 nights ago or 3 nights ago, NBC National News. I wrote this stuff down. So Mental Health America talked about online, people searching online for information. There has been an increase on searches for anxiety within the last several months, 634% increase. Wow. On people getting information on anxiety.
The last 6 months, you said?
Yeah, and on depression, the increase is 873% increase of people seeking information about all of this. And the other thing they came out with is students between the ages of 11 and 17, half of them reported being suicidal. We have to address this. Mm-hmm. Now, you've got wonderful counselors on campus. Kathy Butts is one of my former students. She's the head of the personal counseling section. Butu Matthews, he's an awesome guy. And so you've got counselors on campus, There are also online places you can get some help and assistance, but you've got to be able to talk to people and being able to talk to each other. I don't expect you to be a counselor. I expect you to know who the counselors are on campus. So if someone chooses to talk to you about an issue going on, you can say, I'll walk you over to the counseling center. It's over in Bergeron. Let's go. I'll be with you, so that they're not alone. Because being able to talk about all this stuff is essential today. Because, so you're a tennis player. If you get injured in practice or in a game, that's part of being a tennis player. You know, if you do something to your shoulder, you've known that that's part of the game. And the other thing is that you have other people on your team and you have coaches that can say, oh yeah, that happened to me too. And this is how we'll deal with it. When somebody says to you, oh, there's a virus and you can't have your sport anymore. We've taken your sport away from you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to think about St. Mike's, so St. Mike's, even though the enrollment has gone down the last couple of years, the enrollment of student athletes has not gone down. We've had a little over 400 student athletes at St. Mike's for years. Even though the overall enrollment has gone down, the enrollment of student athletes has not gone down. So we need to address what you're going through. And Nicole Adak, I love Nicole. And Nicole, again, was one of my former students. She was not only in my class, but then I was the advisor, one of her advisors when she did her master's thesis on athlete identity.
Oh, wow.
And if you talk with her sometime about athlete identity, because she did her thesis on athlete identity. If you only see yourself as an athlete and you don't see yourself as more than just that, and that's why this whole concept of more, you are so much more than just a varsity athlete. You are so much more than a student athlete. You're so much more than somebody who works with student government, or you're so much more than somebody who plays a piano or plays a guitar. And helping you to figure out what to do once you realize you are more than what people may see is so important. The athlete identity, if the only identity that you have is as an athlete, what happens when that's taken away from you?
Yeah,
you look around and go, okay, what do I do now? I'm 21, I'm 22, I'm a college graduate, I'm working someplace. What do I do now? Well, you're a son, and you're a brother, you're a best friend, you may be part of a religious group, you may be part of a music group. You're so much more than just, exactly. And that's what I mean. I love this shirt.
Yeah.
And wherever I wear it, I get comments wherever I go, and everything from people who walk up to me and go, "So are you?" And I say thank you. And people will go, thank you for and other people are like, where did you get that? What's that all about? Which gives me an opportunity to talk about it.
Yep.
And so we call this passive programming. By wearing a t-shirt, I don't have to say anything.
No.
The message is there. So the idea of you and SAC combining with TBC and Hope Happens Here and working with Active Minds is so important, because what you have to offer is your perspective. And you have so much value. We have a world that says to you, you're not good enough. You're not strong enough. You're not fast enough. You're not attractive enough. You're not sculpted enough. You're not big enough. I mean, that's BS. You're fine just who you are. And then how do you take that and say, this is who I am. This is where I want to go. How can we do more? That's the concept. And Hope Happens Here, I'm still connected to Hope Happens Here. I still talk about it wherever I can. I got an email from Danny the other day, and it's interesting because when I was nominated apparently to be one of the 40 most influential people in the NEN, two of the people who wrote that nomination were Justin and Danny.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. Wow.
And they graduated in 2017. And we're still in touch.
That's amazing.
So that's the beauty of what students can do to help other students, and especially today, dealing with issues of anxiety, depression, and suicide, which is so prevalent. And again, you look at anxiety, an increase 634%. Depression, 873% increase. Half of the kids, 11 to 17, have thought of suicide. We've got to keep attacking that. So thank you for doing this. I really appreciate being part of it. And congratulations on this, and I'm just so proud of what you guys are all doing.
Thank you, definitely. Those are some very powerful words, definitely. And one thing I just want to add is that, it's one of the things that's incredibly important that you touched on is students helping students as well. and being able to recognize, like that's what it's all about. That's what's going to be able to help this situation and this crisis, and where for student athletes and everyone around. And so do you have any specific advice on resources that students can do when, like, let's say a friend comes to them and says they need help, or any advice on students themselves who are trying to portray the fact that they're struggling and that they need to know that they're loved, I guess, to friends?
Yeah, the more that you can advertise what you're doing, and so this podcast and the other podcasts that you're doing, that's so important because you're getting the message out. And whether it's passive programming, we used to have posters that were posted in every locker room at St. Mike's that talked about mental health issues. I hope they still have them. I'm not sure if they do, but we used to have. So the more information, and the other reality is you can't get to everybody, but you can get to a lot of people. And teaching yourself how to be a good listener, so that if somebody does have something, and to be able to talk to a team, for example, and whether you're a captain of a team or not, and just say, I've been thinking about some of these issues, can we talk as a team about this? That's what the men's basketball team did a couple of years ago. The captain of the men's basketball team at the time was a student in one of my classes, Matt Bonds. Awesome guy. He's playing basketball, I think, in Europe right now. And he invited me to come over and talk with the guys. And the coaches weren't there. It was just me and the guys, and we talked about all of these things. So the more that we can get you talking about it, the more we can get you wearing a t-shirt that says hope happens here, or you are loved, or whatever it is, then the more you're advertising that you are someone who is approachable. And the other thing to remember is you're not alone. And for you to have, you've got RAs, you've got RDs, you've got, people in active minds, you've got campus ministry people, you've got the athletic administration. I think about Megan and Chris. They are such good people, and they're so supportive of everything that our students do. And Shannon, she's the best. Shannon is the best. And having an organization. So when SAC gets together and SAC goes, let's talk about Hope Happens Here. What are you guys doing? What can we do to work together? Because when you're working together, it's that working together, and somebody says, hey, can I talk with you for a few minutes? Yeah. And you can say, I'm not sure what to do, but I can find someone who can help us figure this out. So, you are the best resources that you have for each other.
Gotcha.
And then there are other people, if you need to reach out, whether it's the counseling center, campus ministry, athletic administration, your faculty, your coaches, they're all there to work with you and help. Trust me, they don't do it for the money. We do it because we love working with young people. I mean, that's why I did it. I spent 16 years in the public schools of Pontiac, Michigan, before I came here. And at that time, my students in Pontiac, Michigan, literally were killing each other. The Ku Klux Klan blew up the school buses. The school was 60% Black, 20% Latino, 20% white. There were fights in the schools. There were murders. Literally, students were killing each other. And and trying to realize, what can we do to help people take care of themselves? The world is a complicated place right now, especially right now. The divisiveness of this election, the pandemic of racism, the pandemic of the virus, this is all coming together. You're smart people, or you wouldn't be in college. What can you do to be a resource for the people around you, for not just the people on your team, but what can you do to make sure that SAC stays on target? What can you do to support the people who are talking about sexual violence with, the new organization TBC? What can you do in terms of student government? How can you activate people? Can you get involved in Black Lives Matter? I went to a presentation the other. I'll be 77 in a week and a half. I went to a protest over at South Burlington High School a week ago for Black Lives Matter.
It's amazing.
And it's like, why? Because I can, and because we need to do that. And so the more organized that you are, and so, a couple of years ago with Gay Pride in Burlington, for a couple of years, the only team from St. Mike's that was participating in the Gay Pride Parade was the men's ice hockey team. Nobody forced them to do that. They did that. And then, and then 2 years ago, the last year they had the parade, and I was lucky enough to be one of the grand marshals in it, and it was amazing. The largest group of people who were there as a group, the largest organization, with 150 people marching in Gay Pride Parade through downtown Burlington, Vermont, was St. Michael's College.
It's awesome.
We had students from 6 or 7 different teams. We had people from Common Ground. And so it's coming together as students to say, this, whether it's voter registration that you're doing on campus,
yep,
or, how do we help take care of each other in the middle of this? And so, you're on lockdown right now, and you've had a couple of students who've tested positive. How can you not ostracize those people and make sure that they're okay, and make sure that you're taking care of yourself? I wear a mask wherever I go, wherever I go, and I social distance wherever I go. It takes nothing to put a mask on. Is it inconvenient? Yes. Is it necessary? Yes, because we can stop this. And for resources, you're the best resources that you've got. And understanding that you are so much more than who you may see yourself as. And how can you challenge yourself to do more to support each other? I guess that's the challenge.
Yeah, yep. And I'd like to say also, just for the student population in general, there's all of us, you can come talk to any of us. You can come talk to all of us. And we are here for you, all of us. And Hope Happens Here and SAC. And, I don't want to speak for your friends, but your friends that you trust are there for you as well. And they would want you to come to them if you're struggling. And that's one of the most important messages that I think we can give is.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think the biggest thing is you're not alone.
Yep.
And people need to know that, because right now, you're in your room by yourself. You're quarantined, like everybody else on campus, in that sense of alone, I'm often physically alone. I'm never lonely.
Yep.
I know I have good people in my life who love me, who care about me. And if I picked up the phone and called them, they would be here in a heartbeat, as I would be for them. So it is students taking care of students and understanding that getting the word out, like you're doing with the podcast. Again, such an awesome idea to do these podcasts. Congratulations to you and to Brandon and everybody else that's working on this program. Is getting the word out that there's a collaboration between SAC, Hope Happens Here, Active Minds, TBC. What can we do together? Because together, there isn't anything you can't do.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Okay.
Yep. Awesome. All right. Thank you very much for your time, Dave. It's been incredible talking to you. Incredible, listening to you and your story. And, I definitely know we've made an impact. So yeah, and thank you to everyone who's made More Week happen as well. Brandon, the reps at SAC, and just everyone who's made this possible. Shannon, Chris Kenny. And I hope to see you guys soon. Dave, hopefully when this is over, I hope to see you around and see you at those tennis matches going crazy. So
I'll be up on top yelling for you. So
awesome. Thank you. All right, Dave. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you for your time. Have a great rest of your day.
You too. Take care. Bye-bye.
See ya.